Welcome back to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. I'm Matt Wolff, founder of Ticket Time Machine. Today we welcome Ben Chase to the Wolff Den. How's it going?
This is awesome. I mean, that preview was pretty sweet. The setup is pretty sweet. Just happy to be here.
Yeah, we had a rough week last week with the Gator game out in Utah, but a good time had nonetheless. For the people in the audience who don't know who you are, give a quick intro and then let's get to it.
Yeah, my name is Ben Chase. I'm currently the director of NIL Name, Image, Likeness for the Florida Gators. I've been here since the end of January, so coming up on about 7.5, 8 months. Before that, immediately before that, I was on a crazy road trip. I went to 77 college football games in one season, all on the road, drove to every game, went to all 48 continental U.S. states. I'm an attorney, a recovering attorney. I went to Florida for undergrad, George Washington University in Washington, D.C. for law school. I'm barred in the state of Florida. And before joining Florida and the road trip, I helped create collectives at schools such as Arizona football, Gonzaga basketball, UNLV, among others. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me. And that should be enough to get us started today, I guess.
Yeah, your story it's really such a great story. It's fascinating. So I want to start there. Why? I guess the answer to the question is why. Why did you decide to do that?
The road trip.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where we live, you work to live and live to work. And, for me, I couldn't afford it, but I knew that I had probably just enough credit to do it. And I can talk about that and reminisce and share about that for the rest of my life. Like a lot of people, work until they can do it at the end of their lives. And I can tell you right now, I just drove from Utah to Arches and stuff like that on this past trip. And it was rough. And it's crazy because it was just literally a year later. And I don't know if I'd be able to do it. And at the level I did, 77 games, sleeping in your car for 100 nights, it was one of those prove it to myself and tell that story. And the first day I made the video, I said, I'm going to go to 60 games. And then it kind of took off. And once I made that first video, it was I couldn't let myself fail. And it was kind of just a personal test and journey that I shared with people. And it actually inspired a lot of people to go out and do their own version of it. Well, whether it's 100 basketball games in a year, or, there's a guy right now who's left his job with The Ringer, which is a huge network, to do his version of it. Mind you, he's starting at a very different spot than me. He has 100,000 followers. I had 2,000 when I started. But I guess the why was why not now? And I kind of just went for it.
I mean, that's a big step. I get that because I live my life, as if who knows what's going to happen. And I do a lot of things that just because it'll make me happy. And I don't worry about necessarily the money or that other stuff. But I go to a fair amount of games. This is that's way beyond. You didn't start, hey, let's go to 3 or 4 games this year. And then, so I think you had left your job. Was that the impetus for it?
Yeah, and I had interviewed for a few things. Actually, I interviewed this job, or actually I applied for this job before the road trip, but I hadn't heard back until 2 months later. And it was one of those things where I wanted to do it the right way. I wanted to show that I never asked for money. I never made a Patreon. People gave me money and donated tickets. I only paid for 12 games, but I wanted to show this is my dream. And I wanted to show if you're going to go after your dream, it's going to be hard. Sleeping in your car, eating on the road, my car dying, getting a rental car, and it kind of whatever your dream was or is, you're going to hit roadblocks, pun intended, literally roadblocks.
Yeah.
And that was kind of, at some point in my life, I want to sit back and I documented really well, probably the actual first 57 games, which was the main, the regular season. And then the last 20 games were the postseason and the bowl games. I didn't really do very well on that, but at some point I want to sit down and look at that content and kind of maybe put it together into one kind of journey. But yeah, it was, man, it's crazy to think it was, a year ago.
Yeah, it's time flies, and it's just you look back. Yeah, it's hard to believe that it was only a year ago. Now we're right here at the beginning of the college football season. In order to put together a trip like that, And my sister is actually on a journey right now she's traveling the world, left her job. She's traveling the world, no agenda, just hitting all these other places. But you need a combination of some real planning, some luck, generosity all of this stuff has to come together.
Yeah.
Was there a point that you thought, no matter what I'm trying to do, this just might not happen, or we might fail in some of it?
Yeah, I mean, literally after the first game, I went from Tucson to, well, the first game was in Las Cruces, which is where New Mexico State is. And then I went back home, packed up my van, Betty White, and drove from Tucson to Pittsburgh. And when I got to Pittsburgh, the van was already acting up, and I was like, "Ooh, I've only been to one game." And I went, I think it was like $1,200 to fix like day two of game two. And then, when my transmission blew in just north of Atlanta, like those were two spots where I was stressed. And then, I the last week and a half, I'd lost my credit card. So I had like one credit card left to get me through until the end of the trip, which was kind of, there was a lot of things like that where, I spent a lot of money on this trip, all on credit cards just to like go for it. I'm almost done paying them off. Yeah, there was times where I was at a game, the second game of the season, or I was like, freezing cold, or like, driving overnight from, I went 5 games in 5 days in 5 different cities. Like that's hard. There's a guy on a road trip right now who, he took a break after the first game. So like, and I hope that people realize that, again, it goes back to like, if you want to do something and do it like and go all in, there's going to be roadblocks, and you either have to make the choice to like put your head down and keep working, or find a solution, or know your limits and take a break.
Well, safety is a big factor too, right? Know your limits.
Yeah.
The fatigue factor on that when you're driving.
Yeah.
Like you're just hopping on a plane and you could sleep for 4 hours. You're constantly driving. Brent says, "What you don't need to do this: a wife, kids, and job."
Well, the guy who's doing it right now has a wife. She's just in a doctoral program at NYU. So she's giving him a blessing to do this while he's.
It's like 3 months, right? The whole thing was September, October. Yeah, 3-4 months.
It was 135 days for me.
I think it also depends on the reason. Do you attribute this trip as to landing the NIL job with Florida?
No, like I said, I knew about the job before I went on the road trip. I applied before the road trip. I knew the person that turned the job down and a few people that recommended me. So I think the road trip definitely helped me, network with administration and coaches from across the country. But I already had a foundation for this role that like I probably would have got an interview regardless. I think that probably being a public figure for 135 days and not having any negative things happen to me is probably a win. And so, hey, Steve. But yeah, so that's kind of where I see it.
I think, it's impressive to not having negative, because I was just in Utah, and it's a whole nother episode about what we dealt with some of the fans there. It wasn't even a Utah fan. It was a Georgia fan at the Utah-Florida game. We ended up having to get this guy kicked out of the stadium.
Oh, snap. Was that the shirtless guy?
No, it was the guy who's like the college football tailgate tour. He just started this thing. He's trying to get people to follow his Instagram, and
he got kicked out?
Oh, we had him removed from our section to the next one, and then afterwards we had him kicked out. It was just, he was very obnoxious in our face, trying to like start a fight, and this guy's trying to start his Instagram, trying to find the rowdiest tailgates. That's his CFB tailgate tour. He had like 17 followers at the time. But anyway, the point is,
I found him. Yeah.
How many followers does he have now?
20.
He's moving up in life from 17. But the point was, short of you just going out there and just being nasty to someone's team, which you wouldn't do because you're there, you would think it would be, easier to not have anyone really have a negative effect. When you were at these games, were you rooting for the home team? You were wearing apparel, like people were buying you stuff, and you were getting stuff?
Yeah, so I had a rule during the regular season that I always rooted for the home team unless it was one of 6 teams Georgia, Florida State, Tennessee, LSU, Alabama, or Miami. So I'd buy a shirt and hat from every home game. And I still have them. Like I gave away the first 7 games of hats, I think, maybe 8 games. So I actually want to get like the same hat. I want to find that hat and like put it together in some kind of like museum at some point in my like get men's den or whatever, like guys room, but or like Wolff Den, if you will. But yeah, so I bought a shirt and hat every home game, and I always rooted for the home team. And then in the bowl season, I went for the underdog. So I kind of mixed it up a little bit, right? So like because the bowl games are never really at the home stadium, and it made it really fun, especially because like I saw Utah 3 times in the regular season, all on the road, and then for the Pac-12 championship game, I was able to root for them against USC to kind of mix it up. So that was kind of a nice one. And
Nice.
then I told this to the guy who's doing it right now, like when you wear a team's colors in their stadium, like in their tailgates, they want to share. That's what it was all about, like learning and sharing traditions from all over the country. Our country is so diverse and so massive, like going to Utah, and experiencing their cultures there is completely different than LSU, completely different than, Minnesota or wherever you go. And that was kind of one of my main kind of parts of the trip.
I do a road Gator game every year, and I have a tradition where I go with my friends called Sports Weekend. We do a Major League Baseball, we do college football and pro football. I'm leaving tomorrow for Kansas City. It's going to be our 23rd year.
Wow, that's a great weekend.
Yeah, I've been to a lot of stadiums, and Utah, the tailgate in where I was with the tents, not in front of the stadium, and that could be a whole nother conversation of how they wasted the whole front of the stadium for the football environment. But behind it, where the tents were, I mean, it's up there. It's in the top half of the stadiums that I've been to. They had a live band, and everyone was friendly and giving food. And unfortunately, I can't say the same for the Gators. I mean, I'm always giving, but I don't feel like we're as welcoming to the opposing fans. Did you get that feeling as you're going out there?
Yeah, I mean, I ended up at the Pig Bus, which they have their own Twitter account, and awesome. the live band like on the back of the like tailgate, and that was incredible. I mean, it was open to anyone. I tipped the host just for taking care of us, like just because like it was just one of those things where I didn't bring anything, so I wanted to make sure I showed love. But I even tipped the band. But
the band on their Venmo too.
Yeah. And then I think there are some tailgates at UF that are very welcoming, especially like Harmonic Woods is a good one. And I know that I would say that Florida is a little more spread out with the tailgating scene than Utah, because it's one of those things where like Utah has these parking lots right by the stadium.
Yeah.
Some
of it is location, right? In Alabama, you got that big field there. Some stadiums and areas are just like it. Ryan buys a city shirt, not the team when visiting. I started out on my first sports weekend. I bought a shirt, and I'm like, these things are going to get ruined. This is kind of before the dry fit era. Now I actually have a hat from every trip I take. So I will buy a hat. I have a Royals hat because I'm an old school Royals fan. I probably will maybe get a Kansas Jayhawks hat because I'm a Broncos fan. So I probably won't get that, but we'll see what it is. But to have a hat from each one, I don't even wear them. It's just kind of like what I have them hanging up they're actually on the wall right here. I have hats hanging up, but you could definitely do something cool.
I wanted to put like a shower, not a shower, maybe a shower rack or some kind of pole here that I could because I always get adjustable. Because I'm not like a fitted guy. I like to share my hats, and if they're adjustable, you can share them with anyone. That's kind of my take. So like having them hang and.
I'm going to send you the thing. There's this little adhesive hook for hats. You get them on Amazon, and I have 16 hats right there. Depends on how much room you have.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to hit like 70 hats.
No, I got say I don't have room to put them, but I got that many hats, and I just got to figure out where the heck to put them. Was this a record? I know there was some talk about. Was this a record?
Yeah.
Number of not from someone who wasn't reporting, or just anyone?
Yeah, so I mean, I did as much research as I could. So there's 2 guys in 2016 that went to 57 games. And then there was a guy who I met on the trip who I think his most in a season is around like 60 or 63 maybe. So like, I applied to Guinness and they're like, oh, we don't register college football trips. Mind you, they did a CFL, Canadian football, thing this year.
That's
So I think it's one of those things where I'm going to get tagged in every person that does something similar to this for the rest of my life.
yeah.
And I'll say like for now, like 77 is the bar, and this season it'd be a lot easier to break, honestly, like because they added Sun Belt games on Tuesdays and Wednesdays for a whole month earlier. I did like a cold outline, and I closed my eyes and I could hit like 80 something this year. But also for me, it's not the same anymore because I have connections at schools right now.
You'd have to do
Before
different schools.
it'd be too easy. Like, and that's not me like bragging. It's just like
No,
it's not like the heart of the trip. Like the heart of my trip was like genuinely going, and like I never asked the school for anything. Schools would reach out to me. Fans would reach out to me. I didn't pay for my first ticket to a game 8 of the road trip. Like, and that was Texas, Alabama, which is this weekend, ironically.
Yeah.
So like that kind of stuff, like if I did it again ever, it would be slowing down, telling more stories, staying longer, more intimate experiences, which, this year, like there's like 5 people doing that. So, and I don't think I inspired all of them, but I think it's cool that people care about this kind of content.
Has there been any talk with the College Football Hall of Fame for something like this, a fan experience? I mean, I've been. It's been a while since I've been there, but I would think that would be a part of it.
I mean, the College Football Hall of Fame Twitter follows me on Twitter, and apparently one of the people that run it may follow me now too. There used to be a Gator that worked there, and I tried to like get connected with him, but he retired like a few months ago. I don't know. I think it'd be cool, and for them to have my van and like maybe a TV that's running a bunch of like clips and maybe a bunch of the gear and kind of the story of it, and kind of the American road trip is. I would say it's dying. I don't know. Like I never went to road trips as a kid because my mom is a single mom, but I think there's something really special about just getting in a car and going and stopping in random gas stations. And I have a tradition where every new state I go to, I buy a lottery ticket just to see if that state's lucky. So I think I was able to do it in all 48 states while I was here. So the only ones I have left are Hawaii and Alaska. Utah does not have lottery tickets. I don't believe, but yeah, it's just a really cool thing. And I on my trip to Utah for this trip, I flew into Phoenix and drove up to Utah. So I went to Grand Canyon, Zion, the Arches, Canyonland,
That's a
Horseshoe
great
Bend. Yeah, so like I still have that heart for adventure, and I try to maximize it. I also flew from Orlando to Phoenix one way for $6, so I could probably justify getting a rental for that.
Yeah, I actually buy lottery tickets every time I'm on vacation too, just to be like, hey, who knows? And I have them like sitting here, not looked at, and I like 6 months go by, and then I go back and I check and see.
That's so funny. My dad was a big like scratcher guy when I was a kid. My mom and dad separated when I was young, but I always remember just going. And then like I have an addictive personality, so I don't do it, but I think it's a cool like tradition that I kind of made up on my first road trip when I drove from Orlando to Portland and back in 16 days. So this road trip culture is like kind of like in my bag, and then college football is like also, so it just made sense.
I like it. It's a time and money thing for me. If you have the time and the money, you kind of. My friend and I drove to Auburn and Alabama for the Gator road games. We flew almost everywhere else, but we drove up there.
Auburn's like one of my most underrated. Like I believe that Auburn night games are probably the most slept upon experience in the country.
So I would say the nightlife at Auburn was great. We didn't have a good tailgating experience. We were at the stadium and it was pretty empty. This is a decade ago. Well, where do you put? Give me some of the top tailgates that you were at on the show.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with Texas State. Like, surprisingly, Texas State for students, I would say Texas State for students is probably the most impressive tailgate. And why? They have these like cages for each club or group that are like fenced areas, and it's just private DJ for each group. One of them had like a mini bus in it with just thousands of can of Natty Lights, and it's just like 15 or 20 basically clubs that you can hop in and out of. I was a little too old for that. University of Texas, they're very corporate with their tailgates, like just massive white tents everywhere. I did go to this company. It's called Tailgate something. I don't know. I don't remember, but they gave me a free ticket to a tailgate in Texas that had a ice luge and all you could eat, all you could drink for like $60. But they gave me a free ticket, which is sweet. Penn State whiteout is everything that people talk about. I would say that. Let me get two more.
Well, that's another question too, but I want to follow up on that. But give me a couple more tailgates.
Wazoo's bus lot is incredible, and let me do one more from the southeast area because I've hit Texas. And actually, I mean, New Mexico State, like the first tailgate I went to, tacos and tequila, and they have a whole student section in this field, which is like there's people like walking around with giant like speakers in the field. And then they have like the alumni side, which is like buses and stuff. And they were so welcoming. It was a great way to like start the trip off. Like I went up to one tailgate and said, "Hey, do you have an extra ticket?" And we have 30 extra tickets. And I was like, I just need one. And they're like, "All right, we'll have some tequila and tacos and let's have a good time." And it was, I could probably gush for days about different tailgates if I sat down and remembered all the games.
Yeah, I love a good tailgate, especially when they're inviting like that. And I try and be the same way with the tailgates I'm at to bring, or amongst the different tailgaters next to each other. You mentioned the whiteout and the We Are. I was talking the other day. I think that Tom Petty Won't Back Down is like a top 5 in-game experience in college.
Yeah.
What I've been to, I put Jump Around with Wisconsin. I put Darude at South Carolina at the beginning of their games. I'm trying to think, what else am I missing off the top of your head that you've been to?
Enter Sandman at Virginia Tech is
okay.
Unbelievable. I went there for a Thursday night game, and like I'm just getting chills thinking about it. Like that is,
to me,
special.
It's great you're in that environment.
Yeah, and it was where is it? West Virginia, Virginia Tech. So kind of like rivals, close to each other.
That's the only one in the world who doesn't like tailgating.
What is it say?
Right. He doesn't like people day drinking, crowds.
Let's see what else. I mean, the Iowa Wave is an iconic one now. So South Carolina, I went there for a game. It was rescheduled because of the hurricane. It was a Tuesday game, so it wasn't packed. But I mean, when they do Sandstorm, like it's pretty popping in there.
Yeah, it was shaking when I was there. It was for the
okay. And then I'll do one more, and I think this is the one that I leaned on a lot, like in questions a year ago, 9 months ago. Is I really like Baylor. I love Baylor. They have two traditions that I really enjoy, and one of them is they've been doing it since 1971. It's called the Baylor Line. I don't know if you're familiar with it. So the Baylor Line is their freshmen. Before the kickoff, they all have these. They all have their own jerseys. Baylor, their gold jerseys. They have a nickname on the back, and you have to earn it by doing this like Baylor Line camp before school starts, and it's a religious institution. But what they do is before the team runs out on the field, all of the freshmen run from one corner of the end zone to the other to surround the tunnel, and then the team runs out, and then they have their seats reserved in the front row behind the away team. So it's like every freshman, sophomore, junior are wearing their Baylor Line jerseys, regardless what year they are. And then second, every play on defense, the fans in the stadium they're yelling like, "Oh," and then they also do like a bear claw like this. And when the ball snap, they all go, "Sick 'em, Bears," every play. And it's like super cool. And like it's the only team I saw in the country that has like a unified chant like for every defensive play. And then I think on Tuesdays or Thursdays every week they have a Dr. Pepper float party in their student union. So that's kind of cool because Dr. Pepper was invented. And
did they lose to Texas State? Who did they just lose to?
Yeah, they lost to Texas State.
Now they got Utah coming in. That could be a big, either a great win for them or a terrible start.
Yeah, I actually saw them. I was at the game where TCU had the walk-off field goal against them. And then also I went to the coldest bowl game of all time, which was them against Air Force, and that was in TCU Stadium, which is kind of ironic. So
We're going to segue into NIL sort of. Is TCU not great, or is Colorado that much improved? What did you think? And what are your thoughts on Sanders and what he's doing?
I mean, he is a brand, right? Like in the NIL world, name, image, and likeness is all about marketing and storytelling. And there's no one. I mean, the guy's nickname is Prime, right? Like he is prime time, and he has a team with him that's committed to telling their story, and it's a powerful story. And people like to attach themselves to like great stories and winners. And I mean, what he's doing right now is really it's fun to watch.
I didn't have a problem with what he did. The problem I had is how vocal he was about it with kids who are like. I think he was too vocal about it. Like you do that behind the scenes. It happens every year, right? The coach says, "Look, there's not a spot for you. You're probably better off transferring." And in order to do that publicly, the way he did it, and so brash, that's Dion, and that's fine. He's gonna talk the talk, and now he's gonna try and walk the walk. But that was the problem I had with him. Not that he actually did it, because I thought it was it was the right move. I don't think they're going to win more than 4 games this year, even with this win. But obviously this is the new college football, NIL and transfer portal. You're right in the smack in the middle of it, doing NIL for Florida. Let's go to how did you get into NIL? Because you were doing some stuff as an attorney before.
Yeah.
Which was really, you look like the Darren Heitners of the world. The NIL all came from law, right? What is legal and what's not legal, stemming from lawsuits that started back in the 90s with the O'Bannons.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, while I was an attorney, February 2020, actually, I was invited and flown out to LA to interview to work for a big YouTuber. So true NIL creation, content creation. And I was supposed to start with him in August 2020, but March 2020 happened, and it kind of like put a wrench in the system, right? So like, I was like, okay, well, I had value in this space. And again, like NIL has been legal for everyone else except for the, less than 1% of students on Florida's campus, right? We have 60,000 students and 500 of them are athletes. So less than 1% of our students could be influencers, could have sponsorships, do marketing. And now they are NIL. Now it's legal, right? And how did I get into it? Like my first job in NIL, I got from a Twitter DM. I said, hey, like this company, they went public, and I messaged them. I said, hey, I would love to be a part of this. And 30 days later, they hired me, and I worked for them for 9 months, and got my feet wet. And what the maybe it's the unintended or unexpected version of NIL, which is collectives and creation of funds to create opportunities for athletes, and that's part of it now. And the NCAA is trying to figure it out. The government's trying to figure it out. But until then, I just protect my athletes and maximize their opportunities. And you mentioned Darren Heitner. He helped with the Florida law, and he's a Gator, and he's helped in the NIL space. And it's one of those things where everything is it's ever changing and exciting.
Yeah, Texas A&M. I thought they were messing with me when I was there. They were like, howdy, and the Utah fans were just like that, just real nice, friendly.
Yeah, and I mean, like Florida went to Utah. It was the number 1 attended game in school history, right? So like, and that's not just because Utah fans showed up. It was Gator fans. They had standing room only tickets. I think we influenced their economy. So we probably, as I don't know the numbers, but probably $500,000 to $2 million worth of stimulus for their city, probably at least.
Yeah, I love Salt Lake City. I guess publicly, the argument about NIL is based on amateurism, and it's getting harder and harder to really argue the student athlete and amateurism and how much that matters. Last example I have is the ACC adding 2 teams from the West Coast. I mean, the travel schedule for that, not just football teams, but all of these. That's publicly, right? They say, hey, it's because they're amateurs, and we want to keep them as amateurs and keep their amateur status. Even the Olympics has gotten rid of the amateur status.
Yeah.
But from my point of view, I think the athletes should be able to earn money. I don't know how that is. That's all what they should debate. But I think as we sit here and we're what 2 years into this,
Yep.
I think it's a mess. That's my personal opinion. I think the combination of the NIL, not transparency, the laws being a little vague, and combine that with the transfer portal, I think it's hurt college football as a whole. And I'd like to know, and I don't know, we'll ever know how much has it helped the athletes so far. If we're talking about the average athlete, which is technically what this law was supposed to do. So, what's your feeling as where are we 2 years in, and how long is it going to be until it kind of gets a little bit more steady?
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things where, it again now it's legal, but like, what is the terms and you have different states doing different things, the federal government doing different things, the NCAA doing different things. That's a lot of masters to follow, right? Also, then you have school guidelines, partnerships and deals that the school already has, where Florida's a Jordan and Nike school, and then there's a lot of different things like that are just getting ironed out. I'd say that Florida's a perfect example of a place where when you come here, you're given the opportunity to do some pretty special stuff. We have a gymnast who started her own business, has sold 10,000 hair bows, over 1,000 leotards, or almost 1,000 leotards. Like, true, building a company, building a brand, leveraging her image, and that's special, right? Like, that was the original intent of NIL, right? So then you have like I said earlier, the collectives is the part where the government and the NCAA has to figure out like what that's going to look like. But at the same time, now that you have donors and companies that are doing deals with athletes. Perfect example is Raising Cane's for LSU. The owner of Raising Cane's is a LSU grad. He can do marketing deals all he wants with athletes, right? And they're going to do well. Like, and there's no way to say you can't do this like that. That just doesn't make sense.
Who's to say what I think they might need is, hey, this is what this is worth and what you can pay someone to do. Because otherwise you can pay someone any amount of money you want to kind of do whatever you want them to do.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the same thing as any influencer, right? So like there's no way to say you cannot pay this athlete XYZ, because like the influencer that is not an athlete that's on campus could do more, right? Like,
But
I have two friends. I have two friends that are van life influencers. Like, they live out of vans, and one of them, like, their minimum is like 3,500 a post. Now, if they did that for football players, like, are you kidding me? Like, that would be the crazy good money, right? $3,500 for one post, and that's just for a van life influencer, right? So like that, there's a lot of that's a company making that decision, right? That there's value there at that number.
Well, so that's a measurable thing, and I agree that should be. But there's competition involved here, where it'd be naive to think that paying players money for performance or to come to my school isn't a level playing field in the college space, and that's sort of, I think, where people are wanting to know what it.
And there's a lot of things right now with the IRS, like collectives being nonprofits and all that, and that'll be interesting to see what happens, because I mean, University of Florida, the UAA is a nonprofit, right? So like the university, like both the Florida Gators and the university are nonprofits, and we pay our coaches from a nonprofit entity. So that's like the argument. And then it's hard to, if you're the government, fight millionaires and billionaires that have already invested money in collectives, right? So like there's going to be, and now you have a collective like group of collectives that have joined and become an agency in themselves to give more power to the alumni and donors of different schools. So it's there's a lot of moving parts. I think that there's some things coming down from the NCAA in the next few months. I'm not sure when, but there's more guidance coming, I'm sure. And as my role is to just make sure we're playing within the rules and giving our athletes the opportunity to create opportunities for themselves. Like,
that was going to be my next question. People don't really have a great idea of how NIL works. You, as an employee of the school, are not able to broker any deals, correct?
Yeah, I can talk to companies and say, have you thought about doing this, or have you seen this opportunity? And then they'll say no, like, or yes, and I'd love to learn more, and then they could come up with an idea, and then I can introduce them to the athlete, and that's part of like what NCAA in Florida lets us do, whether it's on campus or via text. And And then from there, it goes to them, and the athlete can come to me and I say, hey, what do you think of this or this? And like, I can't negotiate for the athlete, but I can give them my thoughts and opinions. And any kind of value that we add as far as administration has to be open to all students, right? So like, contract review at this University of Florida is able to be open for all students through our legal services. So I can look at a contract. I also recommend that, our athletes have third parties, look at it, but like I can give my thoughts on it too, because I can have them also go to legal services and do it too. So little things like that, I can go sit down and look at their Instagram and say, probably should take this off, or have you thought about doing this, or even just putting their name. Like, a lot of our athletes don't even have their name in their Instagram. So like when you're a brand or a company trying to look for, Ben Chase, and my Instagram is, be jizzle sizzle like 47, like no one's gonna be able to find that, right? So like little things to make it easier for companies to find you is part of it.
And to your knowledge, how many schools have someone like you?
Well, I run a like 40 to 60 person monthly call. It's an NIL delegates call with people in my role or similar. I kind of fell into running it. I just send out the monthly invite, and then I kind of just like say, all right, what do you guys want to talk about? So there's at least, there's at least 60 of us, and I wouldn't be shocked if every school has someone, Power Five and emerging Group of Fives. If San Diego State was one of the first schools that had a position as a coordinator, and they're different titles, like it's AD, some places assistant AD. I'm just a director, coordinator, and then it's being put into different titles across. Marcus Castro Walker was here before me, and he's for football, I think he's the director of player development and NIL. So like, I think it's some schools have 2 or 3 people. I know Kansas has I think they're hiring a third person right now. Some schools have sport specific. Kentucky women's basketball has someone. So like, it's just there's a lot of these positions.
How closely do you work with the recruiting, like Katie and her team in the recruiting? Because while NIL is technically not supposed to push the recruiting, it's certainly a part of it, and it's going to got to be a smooth transition.
Yeah, I mean, for football, Marcus runs point for all NIL. I help him with, kind of like marketing deals that are come to us from different companies. But when it comes to recruiting for football, I don't touch it at all. The other sports, if they're on campus and they want me to just have a presentation about NIL, I'll do that. So I've done that with a few different sports. Just, this is what we have going on in Florida. This is what's coming up. Do you have any questions? And then speaking with different parents and stuff like that, but nothing too high intensive or hands-on. Just, this is what we got going on. Hopefully you enjoy it. It's an and thing here. So
what I've seen, how does it work when you hear a program land a kid with a crazy dollar? Yeah, he's trying to ask, is it, hey, we can get you this much money and then we'll figure out what that is. I mean, I would think legally that's not how it goes, whereas that actually might be the way it goes. But that's what I think of the transparency. I mean, I'm not. Are we to believe that these players are getting $8 million or $1 million without ever putting a snap just to come here with no guarantee that they're going to stay here? I mean, that'd be a tough pill to swallow, I guess, from a fan's point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I know that, that's a good question. And it's one of those things where coaches are able to say what their current athletes are earning and the things that they are doing for that money, right? So at Florida, if our starting point guard has been able to do this in NIL, and these are the pathways that it happens, right? And the high on 3 numbers that you see, like in my last role, I know some of those numbers are higher and lower, and I know that there's prominent athletes out there that every school is different when it comes to marketing, right? So I know schools that have done really, really well in NIL that just keep their head down and keep it grinding. But then if you go on 3, you'll see the same schools that they write articles about. And that's not, I have friends that work for On3, but that's part of it too. It's is this marketing engine helping tell the story of our NIL? What do we want out there? What do we not want out there? And that's part of this game too, right? There's, you have South Carolina women's basketball say, every women's basketball player is making this much. Or same with, I think it's Oklahoma State. Every football player that comes here is making this much. Like, that's great PR, but is it moving the needle to impact their team when it matters most, right? So like, there's different things like that happen, but hopefully that helps answer your question, Brent.
And the number I saw was that like the average athlete's has gotten $500 from NIL, but that's obviously, you could look at numbers anyway you want.
I don't look at the average of anything. The main number that tells the story of NIL is the median number, right? Yeah. So like the number in the middle, and I would say that just because NIL is legal doesn't mean every athlete's doing it. And when it comes to NIL, like true creator marketing, like it's a very, very low number. And the reason why is, at the University of Florida, 60,000 students. How many of them are actual influencers, right? Like 30, 40 total, including regular students. It's not natural. You have a podcast. That means you're a creator. That means you're an influencer. I did a road trip. I was creative, but that's a very, very small niche of people. Right? I was in a room of 50 attorneys or 50 law students. And I said, how many people here are creator of any kind, LinkedIn, whatever? One person raised their hand. That's 2%. Right. So 2% of 60,000 is what? 12,000. No, wait, 1,200. Right. So like, that's a very small number. But that's the thing. It's like, a lot of our athletes are, able to leverage their influence to just even get, a free membership to a gym or like, a discounted, like that stuff helps too. Like everyone's thinking about dollars and cents, but there's a yoga studio in town that, if you post that you're here, you get a free class, and that's just a easy NIL deal, right? Like, and it's just, influencer marketing at its best.
I mean, that's smart business. I give people free tickets, print tickets for them and say, if you post it, we'll
print it free. I mean, on my road trip, and that's another part, like the benefits is like, I had influencer deals on my road trip. Like I was this close to getting a deal with Applebee's. So like I can talk about that, and I can tell like, I encourage our athletes to do different strategies and make sure they're not watering down who they are. Right. So like, that's just part of it too.
I support the university mostly through the games that I go to in apparel. This is some of my favorite NIL stuff.
Alma mater, baby.
Yeah.
Those are so cool, man.
This is just I wish it was dry fit, but it's a really cool looking shirt. But apparel isn't really what drives NIL, right? It's mostly other things.
Yeah, I mean, apparel, trading cards, those are table stakes at this point. Like, but that was what we were fighting for. When I say we, I mean, that's what students were fighting for from the jump. It's like, hey, like that number 15 jersey, that's my number. And you guys are selling it and making millions of dollars, and I'm not getting anything. Or
they were giving me $4 a shirt. I'm like, why? If I was everybody, I would opt out of that. And that's the problem they're going to have that I'm hearing with EA Sports. Like, they have a lot of power, I think. But the problem is you have to be able to take some losses and to hold out. I tell my friend this, like, if you want to have a strike with the oil companies, everyone get gas today and then don't get gas for a week. They're going to have to do something.
Yeah. No, it's and I don't know what the solution is for EA and they're going to partner with a group licensing group. I think that's One Team, which also works with Fanatics, and that's a whole nother can of worms that it's they take 30% just to like get the athletes to sign up, and then it's like, okay, well, who's in charge of having the athletes sign up, right? And then there's a lot of different things like that. But I'll tell you, a lot of there is a true, genuine gratefulness of this opportunity on campus, right? So like, when you say, hey, like, 2 years ago, athletes, all they wanted was their name on the jersey. And now you have that opportunity and more. And that's a lot of athletes are very gracious of that. And that's like a very impactful thing. At Florida, we are a few weeks away from having the first ever trading cards for soccer in the country. Right. So like, that's a really cool thing that, will last a lifetime. Like these athletes will be able to say, like, I have these trading cards and I was the first school in the country to have them for a soccer program. Like, that's really cool. We're going to have football and volleyball as well. Volleyball will be the second program in the country. Football will be in the first 10. But like that's part of it too. Like, and Coach Bohan can go out and say, hey, like, this year we had trading cards, first team in the country to have them. Assuming we'll have them next year too, right? Like that's something she can say, and that even if it's table stakes, like it helps.
Is that Players Trump? I got some of their stuff.
No, it's with a different company, but you'll find out more soon. But yeah, we're hoping to finalize it in the next week or so.
Yeah, trading cards. I think for me, if we can find a way to get people to buy good things, whether it's a trading card, whether it's a jersey, I think, and that might just be me. I like to invest that way. At least I got something. I'm never going to know where the money's spent, how it's spent. I almost look at that sometimes with like the Red Cross and all of that. I'd rather buy an experience or something. I know I talk about this when we talk with charities. It sounds a little selfish, but if I do that, then I don't have to worry as much where the money's going. If I'm giving you X amount of money, and especially if I'm giving you a large amount of money, there's going to be some obligation to let me know where the money's coming, where the money's going, and or maybe influence some of how that money is spent. And so that's maybe the gray area with trying to get these big donors who say, look, I'll give you $1 million to do that, but now what do I get in return?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where you can only, and that's a good, Brent. So like, feel free to let me know, and when we drop the cards, I'll make sure you know where they are. Just like everything in life, including NIL for the students, like it takes time for people to feel comfortable in any way. And I think, buying jerseys and buying shirts, like, and supporting your favorite athletes, I'm lucky. So when I got here, I was, there's a worry that when you join your alma mater, you'll lose some of that love. But I've fallen in love with sports I never even went to, as a student, right? So like, there's a Nick Delatorre calls me Olympic sport Ben, because like
I love all those sports. You were just at the soccer game. Were we at the soccer game?
Yeah, soccer and volleyball, but like it's something that like NIL has given all these athletes the opportunity to start their businesses and earning the day they get on campus, which is what every student and every person in our country should be able to do, right? Like, and now there's parts of, I use this example a lot. Right now there's a lot of like high schools, like high school associations, like in the state of Florida. If you're not a part of the Florida High School Athletic Association, you can do NIL, but the state of Florida High School Athletic Association, you can't. But say you have a son or daughter who, at the age of 6 or age of 3, started an unboxing YouTube channel, right? There's a guy named Ryan's Toy World. This is a real story. He's a millionaire, right? Like he has toys in Target and Walmart now. Ryan's Toy World, Ryan's Toys, and like I don't know how old he is now. I think he's probably 14, 15 maybe. But say he wanted to play high school lacrosse, or your daughter wanted to play high school tennis. But because she was an influencer, he was a YouTuber before, technically he's not eligible, right? And like, how is that fair? How does that make any sense? Like, because they made money off their NIL beforehand, they can't now play high school athletics. Like, that's another part of this problem, not problem, but like era that we're in, that we have to just tie those loose ends.
I think that part was solid. I think Jeremy Bloom was the Colorado skier, right, with the Olympics. I think that problem has been solved. I don't think there's a whole lot of arguing that players shouldn't and athletes shouldn't be able to earn money or make money. If now the question is how, the average college football fan would probably say there's been money passed around for decades, and now it's sort of like, I don't want to say cheating in plain sight, but we still don't know exactly what is going on with a lot of these deals. And to try and get my issue is, I don't know that the NCAA is going to do anything, because they're in a no-win situation. They're the reason why we're in this mess, starting again back in the late 90s with O'Bannon. They've been fighting so hard against it. I just don't know where they're going to come up with a resolution. I think it might have to go, and this is ridiculous to say, but to the courts, right? And to have some type of mediator and it probably is going to be get to the courts, I think, before we find something that's going to be fair, I think, or at least more outlined.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole another realm that I don't have no idea how that's going to happen. But there's a lot of hands in the pot. But that comes when when there's money moving and different things. That's just how it works. All we can do is play within the rules that are given to us from the state and the NCAA and federal, and and not push any boundaries, and keep building what we have here at Florida. And for that call I'm on monthly is for the benefit of students across the country, right? So like it's people in my role at Oklahoma and Kansas and UCLA, and like it's not like it's a lot collegiate athletics is very competitive, but at the end of the day, like we don't want our athletes to ever get in trouble. We don't, so like there is a pure heart of NIL in the admin place that I'm in, that we care about, the well-being of the athletes, and hopefully there is a unification of some things. I don't think uniform contracts like this. That's a tough situation, because again, I go back to the influencer thing. Like, how can you tell an influencer and an athlete that one has to have a uniform contract and the other doesn't? Like, that's an interesting line right there.
That's really your job, is compliance and education more than brokering the deal. So, because you don't want the players to get in trouble for themselves, that could ruin their career, or and then that also obviously affects the athletic department in the University of Florida and the players and our seasons, stuff like that. So, what's the process that the Gators do and that everyone does to sort of really understand what NIL is and educate the players and make sure? Because it's tough. Now, if you were just trying to track one team and make sure they're all following the rules, now you got to track every team and every player.
Yeah, and I mean, for here, like, it's over communication from the jump. This is my first orientation cycle because I got here after the end of January, so all the students were on. So I had summer and fall orientation. So I met all of our freshmen and transfers from the jump, and taught them the basics, like the ABCs of NIL, right? And what is legal, what's allowed on campus, what's not allowed on campus. I give them my number from the jump. I have, the first day I have 30 or 40 text messages from all our new athletes, and then we're just over communicating, working on our guidelines, giving them, updating them, everything. It's a moving goalpost when with Florida and NCAA and all the guidelines changing. So just keeping tabs on that, communicating to coaches, because we want our coaches to coach. We want our coaches to do that. So for my role and working with our collective, educating them, making sure that everyone's in line and moving together forward. But it is hard. We have 520 athletes. We range from 480 to 520 ish during a year, and maybe a few more. Working with the directors of operation for each team. It's not just me. It's it's a community here, and hopefully that we can grow together and learn together. We just started monthly calls with that are open for any NIL questions, and I'm going to be going back and having FaceTime. Like when I first got here in January, I had open office hours just in our Hebner building. I'm going to be doing that here in the next week, and just picking that back up, where I just the athletes see me, they know me, and they can come to me for NIL or just personal development. I went to Florida. I'm a Gator. I know people from all over the country. We have a football player who is he's a aerospace engineer, right? So I don't know any aerospace engineers, but if I can help him connect with someone who works at NASA or SpaceX or another one of those companies, that's that's not in my role, but that's what I want to do. I want to help him.
You also have to toe the line, because getting too involved in some of this could be something that you're not allowed to do as a university employee, correct?
Yeah. So I don't. Again, I can't negotiate deals. I can help our athletes, find them or talk to or put templates together and say, hey, this is something you could reach out to a company with. But it's one of those things where there are athletes that don't have any interest in this, even a shirt. And that's fine. And then there's some athletes that, hey, I need to pay rent this, or I'm saving up for these headphones. Can you help me, or can you guide me on how to find 5 or 6 deals to add up to this number, right? And I have an athlete that, what are we at? How many deals they're trying to just save up for this one goal, and I keep them honest. You've gotten 4 deals for $600, and your goal is $700. What do we need to do to help you find one more deal, right?
Well, Florida Victorious is the main collective, but there's more than one collective for universities. Is that good? I mean, shouldn't there just be one and everyone's working together and not sort of competing against each other? That would be my opinion. What's the school's opinion?
Yeah, I mean, ideally at Florida, we have one unified Florida Victorious. There's another group called Gatorverse that works with us as well. They're more of an events company. Texas had 5 different collectives that joined into one. Michigan had 5 different collectives that I think are about to join into one. And the goal there is to just unify, the fan base. So the messaging is the same. You're going to the same place. Like there's no confusion. And then going to Brent's question, like the cards are going to be coming out. We still have a few things in the works to get those, but there'll be a lot of PR around it. As far as shirts and stuff, you can go to FloridaNILShop.com, and you'll see. I think football shirts will be going live today or tomorrow, but there's already baseball from last year, volleyball's on there, soccer's on there. So like that's a way to start going, and ideally we'll have every team on there. And then there's other sites you can look up. Influxer is a website, and then what else do we got? There's one more that if you just search, Athletes Thread is another one. So those are probably the big 3. Florida NIL Shop is the one that works with Florida Victorious and is like a local company, alma mater, that gives the best ROI for NIL in the country, royalty rates. So we try to keep competitive on that stuff too. But
yeah, I could vouch for alma mater as a company. I meet with them every year in Vegas at the licensing show. Very
yeah.
Very good.
And the shirts that he had are alma mater shirts, so if that helps
Yeah.
too. What was the question again? I started rambling there.
No, it was more about the multiple collectives and.
Oh yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things. Every school is different, and it's one of those things where I know a school that they have a really good basketball collective, and they have football alumni that want to start a football collective, but they want it to be separate because the people that run the basketball collective have bad blood with the people that run the football alumni. So there's a lot of like just politics. That's not Florida. That's another school.
No, that's everywhere. These things.
Yeah.
Florida, the problems in Florida are not unique to Florida.
Yeah, and this is the history of these schools. You have alumni that love their school, but they may not get to play well together, right? And so like here at Florida, our goal is to just have everyone work together and work forward, and that's it doesn't make sense to have infighting, right?
Now, I think Florida, one thing that they don't do as well is to get their former players to support the programs now. And I've had conversations with them. I don't know what it would take to get them back, but like coming back, supporting, meeting up with them. We're trying to work on something for basketball for next year to get all the basketball former players together. Even just you wearing a Florida shirt, that's a big pet peeve of mine when I go to the games and people aren't wearing Florida stuff. They might be wearing orange and blue, but that's our brand. Like it should be a Florida and a Gator, and it should be very visible. Like when the player comes back, they should be wearing a Gator something when they're on television.
Yeah.
And, to me, that's a big problem. That's just a pet peeve of mine. What would you change if you could just create one rule today for NIL? What is there something that you have in your mind that said this would really make things better, easier, more fair, whatever you want to say?
Ooh. I don't really know. I mean, I would say like for me, there's a lot of different companies that are popping up and different things like that. What would I change? That's a good question.
You can think about that. We'll talk about. I'm a memorabilia guy. We did a Ticket Time Machine did a ticket for the opening of the Condren ballpark. I actually caught the first hit in that. It was
awesome.
A home run, and I got that. I have a Tebow Promise ticket that's actually being sent out to be graded. That's signed right now, and my national championship tickets. What's your favorite Florida memorabilia that you have?
Ooh, that's a good one. All right. I found out. I know what I want to change.
Okay.
It's so the NCAA says that schools are not allowed to direct NIL like guidance to a sport specific collective, but there are sport specific collectives already. There's schools that have collectives that are only for one sport. So like the NCAA says you're not allowed to promote that, but schools are doing that. So like for us, like we can say support Florida Victorious and say there's a coach that is the football coach says support Florida Victorious. What do you think he wants his fans to support? If the baseball coach says support Florida Victorious, what do you think he wants his fans to support? It doesn't make sense. And then you have other schools that have, a soccer specific collective or a lacrosse specific collective, which is the thing. Like support, whatever, Space University Lacrosse Collective. That's directing it to that. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's by default. It's like it's a silly rule.
Yeah, so that's the one thing I would say. And then for memorabilia for the Gators. Ooh,
What was the best thing you got or kept from your road trip too?
From the road trip, I gave away this scarf that I got at Syracuse that I got at a Goodwill. I got it for $25, and it's from the 1960s. It's called a Syracuse 7-footer, and I gave it away to someone who hosted me. But the day I bought it, it came with a cardboard box, and I looked on eBay that day. The same day I bought it for $125 for $25. It was sold on eBay for like $125 or $150. Like, it was a rare, super cool piece. And then for me, I got I have 3 pieces of Boise State's 3 different fields they've had, all blue turf. I think that's probably, so I've had 3 versions of the blue turf, and I was told that there's only been 3 versions of the turf. So I have all 3 versions. I think that's probably tier 1.
What's a stadium you haven't been to that you'd love to get to?
Washington, Nebraska, Minnesota.
I've been to Washington and Minnesota. I would go to Washington before Minnesota, but it's a very nice newish field. I haven't been to Nebraska yet. Could you do this for college basketball? Could you do a tour for college basketball?
Could I?
Is that something you think would be worth doing?
I mean, there's a guy who did it similar to me, and almost got a job with Barstool. I think there is opportunities there. I love basketball. Basketball is my favorite sport. College football is my favorite tradition. So I think that I think that actually I'd have to pay for more basketball games because like it's a different thing.
Not
it's
as rowdy, not as much.
You don't really tailgate, like, so it would be different, but it would be fun. I mean, I would love to go to like ACC, Big East, old Big East, like, and then SEC obviously.
They have talking about playoffs at 12 teams. I think that's ridiculous because there's no fair way to determine who gets a bye, which is such a huge advantage. So I think you got to either go 8 or 16. What's your thought on the college football playoff?
I think now that we have we're looking at like a Power 4, maybe that magically we have those 4 byes on the conference winners, right? It looks like that may be the solution there, right? I for me it's gonna be like whoever's team number 13 is gonna be. I think this is my guess. So I could be wrong. I am worried about was it team number? Is it 7 or let's see? So there's 4 byes, right? So then it's team 5, 6, 7, 8. So like the thing I'm curious to see is how often is the number 9 team a group of 5 team, where they could have been number 8, but they want to make sure that home game is a Power 5 location. I think that's something I'm curious to see. How often is the group of 5 team, the top one, the number 9 seed? And we'll see what happens. But I think that's something I'm really curious about. Also, the team that hosts can pick another location. So I'm curious to see if a team picks, let's go play at Mars. No, I'm just kidding. But like if App State's number 8 and they get pushed by the TV market to do Charlotte instead of App State, right? Like that's something I'm curious to see too. Like, do these home games in some stadiums that may not be large stadiums, do they get strongly suggested to be somewhere else?
Money, right? I just think it's unfair to give a bye without, if we do end up with 4 big ones and that's the byes you want, I guess. I don't think a bye to me in a college football environment is way too big of an advantage, but we'll see what happens.
Well, I think this is, if they do byes, think about this. Like, if you're Florida and Georgia, Florida and Alabama, right? And you're number 1 and number 2 in the country, and you go play in the SEC championship game, you both know that you're going to be in the playoff regardless. Why not rest in the SEC championship game?
Well,
so if you have a
better position, even if you in the playoffs.
Yeah, but if you say but that's the thing. It's like if you're playing for a bye, right? Then it's like at least you have another, like either way, you're playing for a bye, because if you rest all your players, it's a bye week. So I think there is like a carrot there. I don't think in the spirit of competition that a team would do that, but if you're, or if a lot of backdoor things where like Alabama ends up being the 4 seed because they didn't play in the SEC championship and then they get a bye.
That's
Like
the other thing, yeah.
How is that fair? So like I think there has to be some kind of carrot there.
Yeah, that's my point. There needs to be some way to measure it. Even though it's not an exactly balanced schedule in NFL, if you won the division, you get a bye. If you're a higher,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Well, if you're it's like if you're a conference champion and you're in the tier, like whatever, like, and you have less than 2 losses, or you're, I don't know how it'll work. I mean, I am an optimist in all things. So I do not.
I'm an 8 or 16 guy. Are you an 8 or 16 guy, or you think 4 is fine?
I mean, I like when every game matters, and I'll say this: like, this may not make week 7 matter, but it'll make week 12 matter.
Yeah.
Right. So like, if you lose 2 games in the first 10, you used to be out, but now you're not out. You could win your last 2 games and get into the top 12. So like, and I think there will be a lot more games at the end of the year that matter. And Florida State's going to matter every year, literally every year. And that's a rare thing. Like, that hasn't happened. It's sad to say it's rare, but that hasn't happened in a while. And if under 12, I don't know if you saw, like, Florida, if in the BCS era, we'd be in the playoffs like a top 3 team every year.
I says Florida football was better and less complicated. The polls got it right. I don't know about that, but it's sometimes it could work out, even though it's like, just happens to work out. Not because
I know Josh Pate is less is more. For me, it's like, I just hope that the spirit of college football and Oregon State and Washington State, those schools still have an opportunity to be special, because
they won't without an expanded playoff. They're not going to. There's no reason to play each other.
Yeah. So
if I was them.
I went to Washington State on my road trip, and they're great people, and it's a great culture. And like, right now, I feel for them, and I don't know where they're going to land. But like that, and Oregon State could make a crazy run this year. There's a lot of people actually pulling for Oregon State to win the Pac-12.
Yeah, it'd be great. Why not?
Which would be, I mean, DJ looked great this week, and for me, like, as a member of a university, it's hard to like, say like, I want this team to win, but it is cool to see them do well this year for sure.
They should just stay as the Pac-12. There's nothing against that says they can't stay, except for the money. They stay.
there is a clause in in their Pac-12 thing. If it's dissolved, the remaining teams like cut the remaining money or whatever. So they could like get a check technically and then figure it out.
No, they don't have to play a championship game.
I'd be curious, like, to see, if they go independent, schedule each other, and kind of like, horseshoe together a bunch of different schools and kind of see what happens. I don't know.
I would do. I hate Notre Dame for not being in a conference. I mean, to me, that's the most ridiculous thing in college football for my lifetime. Like, how are they not in a conference?
Yeah, and then I think the American is targeting Army or Navy to be added to their
well, that would be interesting too. We're going to let you out of the Wolff Den with the same question everyone gets.
Okay.
You spend a full day, 24 hours with anybody in the world, but they have to be alive and you can't be related to them. Who would you choose, and what would you guys do?
Anyone in the world alive.
Anyone in the world. Got to be alive and can't be related. Brent wants to go fishing with George W. We only ask this question to guests. He's been invited to be a guest. We'll see if he ever comes on.
That's a really good question. I think that, and we could do anything.
Anything you want.
Okay. Well, besides like the person I'm courting, I'd want to spend a day with them and go like.
Can't be related to them, or like no.
Travel the country. I know. I would say right now, I would want to spend a day with Michael Jordan.
Jordan?
And just talk to him about how his mindset of like just, he's so dialed in at all times, and like just kind of soaking in that. I mean, like, Elon would be a fun one to do.
Jordan's I got to get the final count, but Jordan's been answer quite a bit. Did you watch the Air movie?
Yeah, Air was good.
Movie, yeah. Is
But
he the
yeah,
best player of all time?
Jordan is the greatest player, and LeBron may be the best player. I think they're two separate things. But yeah, Jordan's a good. It's one of those things like you could answer a million. You could answer with like the smartest person in
No
the
wrong
country.
answer.
Yeah,
Sure,
it's your choice.
play golf with him. You play basketball with him. Maybe
Yeah, he'd take my money in golf. Yeah, we could go to Atlantic City. Jordan and I go into Atlantic City. That's all we're
Oh man, Atlantic City's. I'm from New Jersey. You don't want to go to Atlantic
Okay,
City.
Jordan and I go into Vegas together.
Now you can go anywhere. There's so many places you could gamble. You can even gamble in Utah. There was a place like a couple hours outside of Salt Lake City that had some gambling, and there was some. You can get in trouble anywhere, basically.
I had to watch. Yeah, I gotta watch myself. But yeah, that'd be a fun one. But all right, well, I'm grateful for you keeping me. Putting me on. It's been a longer podcast than I expected, which is fine.
Yeah.
Hopefully, there's some value here. Brent,
great information. If you want to contact and get more information about what the Gators are doing, reach out to Ben. Check out Florida Victorious. Check out the influencer, FloridaNILShop.com. You can follow him on Twitter. He's a great follow on Twitter, and you can see more about his trip if you want to find that out. And hopefully, we'll turn this season around.
I'm excited. And we have a young team, but we have a team that cares, and I think that's important. So
I think we'll be better than the experts think. That's my opinion. Tune in. We're actually off for a couple of weeks with some travel. Tune in, and we'll have some more Wolff Den for you. Have fun. Go do, like Ben says, go do something fun. Go do something that makes you happy. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mac.